Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we do have yet another freaking ALEO ASIC coming from GoldShell. We do have officially the AE Box 2. So yes, the AE Box 1, AE Box Pro, and now a third model. Again, doing this same garbage. So we'll have the specs, we'll look at price, we'll talk about it. We did officially also get the official release info from IceRiver regarding the AE0, so it is officially confirmed by them. We do have the official MSRP, we do have the release window. So we'll give our quick thoughts on that and just kind of give an overall viewpoint on ALEO mining as a whole. Like, what is it looking like? How's it been doing? Because that was kind of a big question with the original AE box. How is it going to hold up? And how is it kind of looking for them here in the short term, right? Kind of what to expect. So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So GoldShell continuing to do this garbage of essentially releasing these miners back to back to back to back. Okay, so we are now up to the third model within just the span of weeks. We are now at the AE Box 2. This is a 54 mega hash model, 530 watts. Okay, so immediately just eyeballing it, comparing it to the others. More of the same garbage, right? It essentially just really looks like it's the same chips, just maybe a different amount of chips on the board itself or in the unit, just kind of reconfigured, right? So as we compare it to the original model being the AE box, the original model is 37 mega hash, 360 watts, 9.73 joules to mega hash. Okay, that was the first iteration. As we go to the Pro, 44 mega hash, 460 watts, worse efficiency here. So 10.45 joules to mega hash, kind of leading you to think what? Probably the same board, literally just an extra 6-pin just to kind of be able to overclock it. Really just seems like it's overclocked. Okay. Now we come to the third iteration, slightly better efficiency, right? So 54 mega hash, 530 watts, 9.81 joules to mega hash. Hard to say exactly. Most likely, maybe a few more chips kind of downclocked. Because if you look at the efficiency now goes back essentially to the original model, right? So most likely, there is actually just more chips in this unit. Okay. So just eyeballing the specs. Again, the biggest complaint is why is there such a need to release 3 different SKUs with essentially most likely the same chips? Okay, this just frustrates the end consumer. Whoever purchases the first one, it's like, damn, I wish I would have waited like 2 weeks for the next model, and then getting the next model, like, okay, maybe there should be the next one, when a few weeks later, you now get a third model with essentially the same chips. The frustration here is, why not just release a singular unit if you are using the same chips? You've already done this design over and over and over, gen after gen after gen, different algorithm after algorithm. Why not just release this model from the get-go? Release the AE Box 2 using the same chips, release maybe a underclock firmware where you can get this type of lower efficiency or lower wattage. Maybe people prefer this 360 wattage and have the option to go up to this wattage, right? That's a big part of the frustration. If they were to just release one SKU, they would piss off a lot less of their consumers, and it's the same thing, right? You would probably get either the same amount of sales or potentially even more, because people aren't going to be wary of the next model coming out, right? I mean, it's been a repeat over and over and over, and it's the same thing. You're just pissing off your consumers over and over. So it's got to be working though, right? People are still buying these things. Otherwise, they would maybe stop this practice, but it is what it is, right? So far, it seems like it's got to be working for them. If they're continuing to do it, it's just me, my personal preference. I see this kind of garbage, huge turnoff. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that just pisses people off. Again, if it's a few months down the line, a little more understandable, but it's literally weeks apart that you're releasing a third model, essentially the same configuration. Okay, it's a little old, right? So does this model make sense, right? So the MSRP price on this thing is about 23 to 2500. I'm guessing whether you do the PSUs or not, so let's call it 2349. The overall issue here is the competition, right? The competition not only amongst themselves, right? It's essentially the same unit. It's IceRiver. IceRiver also has their unit. Now it's the game of efficiency, and this is where the standout is like massive, right? It's one thing if it's a 10, 20, 30, maybe even 50% difference. It's a 5x difference in efficiency. Okay, the AE box 2 is right around 10 joules to mega hash versus the AE0 being at 2 joules to mega hash. Okay, so the difference here is just going to be longevity, right? If things kind of play out like they have in the past, those that are less efficient tend to get phased out quicker, and with this being such an immature network, as the hash rate and difficulty increases, it's going to be a game of efficiency to a point, right? We kind of saw that with like the AL boxes, the originals, and as we go down the line over and over and over again, right? We saw the same things over and over. Okay, so this is why, if anything, this guy's more appealing. The downfall, though, is the release window, right? So initially, they were both announced essentially at the same time. The original release window for this guy was March. Now it turns out it's April. We did finally officially get confirmation. It is going to be at that $19.99 price point, which is at the same exact as the A box 2. The downfall again is just going to be the timing, right? So the efficiency is much better though. It's 50 megahash, only 100 watts. 100 watts, you're not going to notice. 500 plus watts, you're going to notice that, right? Especially if you get to a point where it's at a loss. So the main appeal, though, with the gold shells, in reality, the appeal would have been that first initial one, right? And it's mainly because it's a game of who comes out to market first, and you're trying to ROI this unit as quickly as possible. Because again, the main appeal here is the profitability of these things, which for the amount of wattage and what it is, in reality, even the price point, it's extremely appealing. The question is, how long till other units come on and really devastate the network? Okay, and that's what we mentioned from the get-go. That's kind of what you're betting against. And so far, realistically, if any guys degens to this first one, you got it before Chinese New Year, or you put in your order and you got it to ship before then, this extra month kind of does bode well for you, right? So is it still going to be worth it? Because again, people get fixated on these profit calculators and they look at specifically profit. They're not looking at the yield, they're looking at profit. $20 a day. Okay, the question is just how long is that going to last? Because again, in reality, the focus should be the yield. Your yield is going to be 77 a day, right? If ALEO appreciates by the time the A0 comes out, potentially you could still be making the same or potentially more. What is going to go down though, no matter what, is the yield, right? So this is why we're so fixated on the yield versus the fiat current profitability. Okay. As far as outlook goes, this is another one where it's been working in your favor if you did degen on that first round, because overall it hasn't been going up a whole lot, right? So it's definitely working in your favor here in those regards. Just because if you look at the overall hash rates currently at 240 gigahash or gigaproofs a second, you can see here it's remained at this point, right? It actually hasn't increased even with these units coming out. Okay, and a lot of it has to do with that what happened. Essentially, these units most likely just replaced all the GPUs that were on there. Okay, prior to this, it was essentially mostly all GPUs. Okay, but as ALEO's price started going down and these guys coming out, it became unprofitable extremely quick for a lot of the GPUs just because, again, these ASICs were so much more efficient, even more so than the most efficient GPU being the 4090 at the time. For example, profitability now on ALEO with the 4090, you're losing 18 cents a day per card, right? Even your overall total revenue is only 56 cents. Then on top of that, you're at a 18-cent loss, right? So essentially, drive down all the GPUs, because again, this is a 4090 being the best card for it at the time, because again, it's very core intensive. So essentially, most likely, nearly all of those are mostly unplugged, and it just got replaced essentially with these little gold shells. Okay, so now from here, what's going to happen though? Is it going to continue to go up with this third release from GoldShell, or is it going to continue to spike with now this IceRiver unit? It's hard to say, right? It's really hard to say, mainly because of overall sentiment. Current sentiment in mining in general is at a bear market low, right? It's pretty much right down there with the bulk of the bear market. Okay, it is extremely low. The entire crypto market sentiment as a whole is extremely low. So it does bode in your favor. Again, when things are like this, if it looks interesting, if it looks appealing, this could be potentially a time, right? The other thing it has going for it, as bad as it sounds, is that it's making that much money, only 100 watts. And this price is arguably at a low, right? So it's currently down to 27 cents. Again, not too long ago, this thing was at a few dollars, right? It did open up at like $4, $5, $6. I wouldn't even factor in it getting anywhere near there. But even as far back as like December, it was still over $1. So the end of December, so the beginning of this year essentially is when it started going down under $1, right? So is it at the lows? Can it go lower? Sure, right? Market cap's 95 mil. So in reality, in the grand scheme of things, it is a fairly small market cap. It's ranked number 419. Is there potential for it to go lower? Yeah, right? But it's risk to reward. How high do you think this thing can go? Do you think it can do well? Do you think it has that potential? This is kind of the difference with some of the other releases that they released when the prices were pretty damn high, right? In this case, it's releasing at all-time lows. Okay, so this is where it does get a little bit different. Prices at all-time lows, so arguably there's a potential for it to have a bounce here within the next few months. We do know there's a lot of things going on in the market, which is causing all this volatility. So once we get past that, let's say 3 to 6 months, anywhere in that time frame, this is where things can rebound. To what extent? This is where you have to kind of come up with your thesis and see what kind of price prediction you have on your own. But that's what does makes this guy more appealing, right? Because let's say it does return back even to $1, where things look pretty different, right? Especially looking at the AE0, if we go back to $1, I'm making $72 a day on a unit that's only 100 watts. Okay. So although that part sounds good, again, the other elephant in the room, the other thing you got to worry about is the hash rate and difficulty increasing and increasing potentially massively, right? So again, even at this time, a few months later from the original release, you still have to worry about when those next models are going to come, right? We're factoring in just these little tiny guys. There will come a point where those big boys release, right? We know that IceRiver will definitely be working on them. They'll be working on probably a light version as well as a big boy version. And Bitmain confirmed a few years ago they were working on their unit, right? So chances are they're coming. It's not a rumor mill or, oh, maybe it'll come. They are coming. It's just a matter of when, right? And that's what you're going to be betting against. The longer that delay is, the better off you are here, right? Because essentially once they do come out, it is going to change things drastically, especially for the GoldShell units because of their efficiency, right? Their efficiency is to the point where once these other models come out and the hash rate and difficulty really does begin to spike, they're going to become unprofitable very quickly. Okay, so that's why looking at it, maybe it does pan out for you guys who did get the original A box or A box Pro, but realistically, I look at ASICs more long term. If it's a short term flip, then it may work out, right? You maybe actually hopefully got that first unit, you're able to make your money back in those 3-4 months, and then flip it at that point, right? That would be the name of the game, is to flip it before those big boy announcements come, because as soon as they come, we know what's going to happen, right? Because again, it's not going to take a ton of units to have a major effect on the network. Okay, if we do just a quick little calculation, if we look at the overall hash rate, we are at 240 gigahash. So for easy math purposes, let's go up to 250. We know each unit is what, 50 gigahash, right? So the A0 is 50 gigahash, the A box 2 is 54. So again, easy math, we're going to do 50. An average number that we've been using that tends to work for the amount of deliveries of these things is, let's say, 2,000 units, right? Amongst the two brands. Could it be significantly less as far as how many people purchase them? Sure. Can it be a lot more? Also sure, right? This is the variable where we don't know. It's a lot easier to predict when they release their larger units because there's a lot more of an emphasis on profitability, okay? So if we do a quick little calculation, we do our 50 mega hash, we're going to multiply it by, let's say theoretically, those 2,000 units, right? That's going to bring us to 100,000 mega hash. We put it into hash rate calculator, which again, you're just going up and down by zeros, right? So we'll just use this to visualize a little bit easier. 100,000 mega hash brings us to about 100 gigahash, and considering the overall hash rate is currently at 250, right? So in that ballpark, so give or take 2,000 units would be a 50% increase in the overall hash rate. Give or take, obviously a little bit less, but you do have to factor that in, how much of movement that can have, right? And that's definitely going to affect your yield overall. In reality, the bigger concern is just going to be the bigger units, right? The bigger units is where you really need to be worried because that is going to absolutely devastate these things because they're just so much more powerful, right? So typically we've seen in comparison with the IceRiver units, they're about 3,500 watt units. So one unit would be 35 of these things. Okay, so you got to consider one unit equals about 35. So it's not going to take a whole lot to really, really devastate the network. Okay, and it's again, it's a variable as far as how many release, how many actually get purchased. Because again, if they were to drop one now, I mean, it would be insane because you would multiply this profitability number by the 35, right? So even if they were to announce it now, it would have a crazy profitability number. It'd be like what, $700 a day? Like it would be insane for whoever the lucky first guy is to get one. Obviously, it's going to change big time depending on how many people get it, but that's where it's going to get wrecked. So again, if you are interested in any of these things, whether it's the AE0, the GoldShell, the only play that could remotely make sense is a short-term flip. Okay, both of these are going to get wrecked. Specifically, more so the GoldShell, this guy at least will have the efficiency, so it'll be on par. It's just going to go down drastically, right? So right now, it's going to be hard to say what the profitability is going to look like in these next few months. To me, just realistically, it's hard to say. Either one aren't really appealing, right? If anything, maybe you're a ALEO bull, maybe the big boy unit, but realistically, it's going to have, at least initially, an outlandish price just because this profit calculator is going to look insane. But we're going to have to wait and see, right? But for me, again, it's a lot of risk, especially considering just the state of the market, right? For $2,000, you're arguably better off just buying the ALEO because if we look at it, you'd get about 7,000 ALEO currently, right? If you were to spend the $2,000, just throw it on there now, right? And then even just let's divide it. Let's take our 7,000 we would get by just buying it divided by the 70 we would yield. So it'd be about 100 days, right? So about in 100 days, which is give or take what it was initially on that original A box. And it looks like you may actually make it, right? So then at that point, it may bode well for them. But this way, because I mean, it's extremely likely that sometime in the next month, month and a half, maybe 2 months, once the market starts getting some stability, we'll probably likely to start see these announcements, right? It just depends on ALEO's price action, how it goes, the overall sentiment, and when they decide to release. This is the thing, is that we don't have that crystal ball. It could be in the next few weeks, could be in the next few months, maybe it's not even until months and months and months down the line. And maybe the people who do buy these units make out extremely well, right? It's a risk, and in my opinion, an extremely, extremely high risk. I like to degen on certain things when they make sense. This one is extreme on the extreme high end, right? So to each their own. It can pan out. It may work. It may not work. A lot of variables. ALEO, I think, will do well. This is one that I would definitely just rather buy. I probably wouldn't buy $2,000 worth. Maybe even just a couple $100, but it's hard to say, right? The market right now is so rocky. BTC's under 80 grand. Alts are definitely struggling right now. But ALEO as a whole, think eventually will do well. There's a lot of backers. There's a lot of interest. So for me, I think it will do well. It's just hard to say where the bottom's going to be, though, right? It's hard to say because we don't have a lot of that info. We don't know what the VCs bought in at. We don't know. We don't even really have good unlock schedules. We've been trying to like dig deep a little bit. Nothing really there. They don't really make it publicly available other than the percentages and stuff, but they don't have a specific breakdown, which I'm not a fan of because it seems like they have something to hide. Been rumors. I've been hearing people say that this is a China coin. It's not a China coin. It's one that has been around. It's one we've been following actually for quite a few years. Reason being, it's a proof of work coin that has a lot of VC funding. Okay, so as we all know, especially right now, this is definitely, like we said months and months and months ago, that this is going to be an institutional bull run. Those coins that have institutional backing, that's kind of where my focus is, right? So is ALEO high on the list? One we've been watching forever, but there's just too many others that I feel more bullish on that I'm poking in there first. But the reason, again, we're saying that this one, it just does have a lot of VC funding, right? It goes back, their first funding round was back in April 21. Their Series A, they raised $28 million back at that time. You can see who the leads were here. A16Z, which is Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the biggest. Coinbase Ventures, obviously one of the biggest, which now you know why they were listed on Coinbase immediately. Polychain Capital, which is another big one. Balaji is another big one. Galaxy, another one of the big ones. Again, these are all major players in the crypto VC space, all in there. Okay, that was the first round. Then Series B, the main Series B, the lead was SoftBank, which is another big one. A16Z again, and Samsung. This is another huge standout, right? And this is another big standout. $200 million were raised on that. And then there was a secondary Series B with Samsung yet again raising even more also. Okay, so a lot of VC backing. We typically know these guys will get their money back. What their initial buy-in though, we don't know. So it's hard to say how low this thing can go. But just on that front, it has that kind of potential, right? So just kind of factor that in. Again, I know there's been a lot of rumors of this thing being a China coin. These guys aren't going to be investing into a China coin, right? So just do your own research. Don't just listen to people. Look at actually things. Look at things from that perspective. Don't just take people's words. Don't even take my words. Look at it yourself. Do your own research. Come up with your own thesis. Come up with your own conclusions and see what makes sense to you, right? You can look at all these numbers and crunch these numbers and see what makes sense. It has to make sense to you for you to be able to want to invest into it, right? And that's how typically people make out the best, and that's how you get your own higher confidence plays, right? Whatever it is, whatever segment it is just right now, things are going to be extremely volatile, especially with this one. Again, at this point, there's just so many coins that are so arguably undervalued at this point. It's hard to justify any hardware purchases because, again, it's just making more sense to buy the coins, right? So overall, still kind of interesting. We're going to be watching it closely. We'll see how it plays out. It does, again, this later release date, because, again, this is April 15th to April 30th. So realistically, people aren't going to be getting it until like May. So this does bode extremely well for the degens who got into the first A-Box batch. We'll see how it plays out. Would I be interested in this A-Box 2? Absolutely not. Again, you had the first mover advantage here with this one. Now with this other one, you have only about a month before the IceRiver unit comes out, right? So at this point, again, this one is so much more efficient. These guys, as soon as the big units come out and that hash rate and difficulty does get decimated, these guys will likely be unprofitable, right? But again, for a couple 100 watts, not the biggest deal in the world, but again, for me, the way I would play it, if you got in early, you made that money back, just flip the unit, right? So to each their own, come up with your own strategy. That's just my viewpoint on it. Let me know in the comments though, guys. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this new third GoldShell model within the matter of weeks? Do you guys like what they're doing there? Do you guys despise them? Let me know in the comments, guys. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I am out.